Everyone has had a rusty fastener that they have had to deal with at one time or another, and we all just reach for that penetrating lube because usually that's what gets it loose. But how does this stuff actually work? Let's find out. That's what we're going to be looking at today in the Grassroots Motorsports garages. Okay, penetrating lubricants. Of course, CRC freeze-off, one of our favorites. Whenever we have a stuck bolt, a rusty nut, some kind of fastener that just will not come loose because it's been heavily oxidized, this is always what we reach for. But what's going on? How does it work? Well, we do a couple experiments here and kind of find out exactly the methodology that this stuff works under. First thing is, why do you need a penetrating lube? Well, you have this mechanical connection that's been created and it's been sort of augmented by oxidation. Now, these are actually a couple of bolts that we've been planning this video for like 8 months now. So I've been rusting these bolts to get them to rust. So they are nice and rusted up. So you've got not only that interface between the threads, but now you have this layer of oxidation that is expanded in there and is creating an even more sort of robust mechanical connection between these two fasteners. So we need to break that connection to get these fasteners apart. So how do we do that? Well, a lubricated thread is easier to manipulate than an unlubricated thread, so we got to get some lubrication in there. But as we've already established, we've got now a sealed mechanical connection because of that oxidation scaling up and expanding in there. So how do we get that lubrication into those threads? Well, I'm going to use a couple of methods. The first way that any penetrating lube works is by capillary action. You might be familiar with capillary action from drying yourself off after you get out of a shower. It's the way a towel works, essentially. It is the sort of propensity of liquids to draw themselves up between two very close surfaces. So to do a little demo of that, we've got a couple of pieces of polycarbonate, clear polycarbonate here. Very smooth surfaces, fit very, very neatly together. And we're gonna spray a little bit of freeze-off into this plate here. I'm putting this in front of the plate because we've got expensive camera gear here, not because I'm doing some kind of a trick behind this piece of pig mat. All right, so we've got our puddle of liquid here. We're gonna light it from the back, and this is actually a really cool demo of how that capillary action works. If we just take these two pieces of polycarbonate, fit very neatly together, push them down in that liquid, you'll see it draw up between those two pieces of polycarbonate and just sort of capillary action itself almost all the way to the top. So, very tight gap. These are essentially two smooth pieces of polycarbonate, but that liquid is fitting in between them. Well, a couple reasons it can do that. First off, the film thickness of oils can get very, very thin and remain stable. For a penetrating lubricant, you're talking about something thinner than a micron. A micron is a millionth of a meter. Human hair is about 70 microns thick. Of course, one of my human hairs is about 100 microns thick because I have nice, lush head of hair. But an oil film can be as thin as just a few microns thick. So very, very thin, very, very easy for two very closely placed surfaces to draw that film into it. So we can use capillary action to get our penetrating lube in between those two physical surfaces of the fastener and the threads that it's inside. So what else can we do? Well, we can help it out a little bit by reducing the temperature of the fastener in question. So any malleable metal, steel, aluminum, brass, bronze, whatever metal you're talking about, the properties of that metal are going to change with temperature. If you can reduce the temperature of a piece of steel, it's going to actually shrink relative to the size it is at ambient temperature. So in the case of steel, just using kind of ballpark figures here, but if you can reduce that steel by about 3 degrees Celsius, you're going to shrink it about 1 micron per inch. So we've already discussed that this oil film, this penetrating lubricant in freeze-off, can be less than a micron thick of that film. So if we can reduce it by a few degrees, we give this lubricant a better chance to work. So, we got the handy temperature gun here. You've probably seen one of these pointed at your forehead recently. So let us take a reading on the ambient temperature of this fastener. It is 85.6 degrees, 86 degrees, which is about the ambient temperature in the shop right now. We will soak it down with some CRC freeze off. What was that, 7 or 8 seconds of spraying? And we've reduced the temperature all the way to 74 degrees. So we've dropped 12 degrees, so that's surface temperature, but if we spray that long enough, we let it sit long enough, we let it actually cool the entire fastener, we're talking about being able to shrink that fastener by multiple microns and let that penetrating lube do a little bit more work. All right, to get a sort of visual representation of how this stuff actually works, we're going to take one of our bolts here that we've been rusting for a while, and we will get a little bit of this freeze off that we've been using up into this pipette and just apply it to the top of the threads here and see how long it takes to crawl all the way through. So we are doing this at ambient temperature. We are applying the CRC freeze off just to the top of the thread at ambient temperature, and we'll keep an eye on the bottom there and see just how long it takes to crawl through. All right, here it comes. It is poking through in the bottom, and it's actually worked its way down the sides as well. It actually worked its way down the outside as well, which doesn't really do anything for unfastening the bolt, but it was a nice visual representation. You actually see it kind of working in real time. You can see the entire junction there around the bottom is starting to get a little bit shiny with the CRC freeze off working its way through that mechanical fastener there. So that is how penetrating lubes work. It's something we reach for all the time in the shop whenever we have a stuck bolt, whenever we have something rusty, and sometimes just preemptively when we have a bolt that we know is going to be a problem, we'll reach for a penetrating lube. For us, usually it's a CRC freeze off. It's something we've used for a while. It's something we trust. And we just naturally spray that stuff to protect those threads on the way out. You can generally produce enough torque to get any fastener off, but sometimes those fasteners come off through a full mechanical separation. And when you want to unthread something, you need to lubricate those threads. You need to get something into that mechanical connection between the threads and the fastener itself. So I hope you learned a little bit about how penetrating oils work. Of course, thanks very much to CRC for supporting all of the video here at Grassroots Motorsports. If you like the stuff we are doing on our channel, please go down here and subscribe. Please hit that like button. If you're watching us over on Facebook, please follow us and please like the channel. And of course, you can check us out on the web at grassrootsmotorsports.com. Thank you very much for watching, everybody. We'll see you next time.
Support brands that support Grassroots Motorsports. Get your chemical solutions from CRC Industries. Visit crcindustries.com to learn more.